Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the 4th box. Plugging away as usual. Gosh, there are so many things I want to talk about tonight, but I'm kind of focused on one subject that we're going to get into here shortly. I'm really feeling quite anxious about the state of the world. I know that last week, actually, we didn't touch on it, Pops. I know last week there was actually a little bit of an internet sensation saying that September 23rd, 24th, I think were the days, was the day of the rapture. And people actually thought it was over. It was the end. Not quite, but it does feel like we're getting there with everything that's been going on. So before we get too far down the rabbit hole, I'll let you give your greetings and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, hello, friends and patriots. I did hear the point you mentioned about the rapture. There was some discussion, I guess, going around this area as well related to that. And I remember, quite honestly, back in 1984, for whatever reason, there was a bunch of those things that went around. So, from time to time, I think you hear it, although I would suggest that many people are saying today there's a lot of signs. And perhaps there have been at other points down through history, but it certainly does seem like there's a lot of things going on that are quite biblical in nature. But as we get kicked off tonight, I want to say hello to everybody that joins us from around the country. Greetings from the 4th Box Studios, tucked away safely in the virtual Buckman Tavern. It's a place that patriots gather, and we are certainly happy to have you along for the ride tonight. I am toasting with a Flannel Fest from Sam Adams. It's a wonderful Munich-style Dunkel. They got a lot of great beers out this time of year. I love the fall beers. So I'm raising my glass to all of the students and young people in particular who are standing and having prayer vigils and other gatherings honoring the memory of Charlie Kirk, I think maybe. To your point that you have made in past episodes, maybe the young people are further ahead than the older people in recognizing there's got to be some sanity in the room. And I think this was on display at the Penn State football game, among other places. TPUSA was there and handed out 5,000 Freedom shirts, such as the one Charlie was wearing. But I know that there are other prayer meetings and vigils that have gone on college campuses and with young people around the country. And I am raising my beer tonight in salute to all of those that have the wisdom to say there's a better way to get through these issues than what was displayed a couple of weeks ago. So,
cheers to that.
Yeah, for my quote tonight, the people cannot delegate to government the power to do anything which would be unlawful for them to do themselves. And that came from John Locke. He had a lot of great ones, a great philosopher, great vantage point on personal liberty from John Locke. I wanted to clean up one thing before we get into your topics tonight. Last week, we spent a good deal of the show on the Constitution, and I had mentioned based on a question you posed, that there is a mechanism in place, and I suggested it was Article 4 or 5, and I have done my research, and it is Article 5. And the way to amend the Constitution is it's not easy, was not intended to be. But the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention and make for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid in all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution. When ratified, this is the tough part, by the legislatures of 3/4 of the states. So you got to have 2/3 to get it started. You got to have 3/4 of them to ratify any amendments to the Constitution. So it's a pretty heavy lift. It was intended to be, but that is the mechanism that's in place. So anybody who wants to change anything that's in this Constitution, they're prescribed in Article 5 is exactly the procedure in which this document can be changed.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, and thank you for sharing that bit there. It's incredible that it is that complicated on paper and yet so easy to do off paper.
Yeah.
They just do it all the time.
They just do it. Yep. And we're so far and so used to not just doing it that I don't think anybody even cares if there was a method that was prescribed. That just gets done by executive order and or other means. They just make laws that are completely out of bounds and nobody bats an eye, and that's how they get away with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight is a prime example of times that this happens and is happening. We talk about freedom all the time. We talk about what your God-given rights are. And one of those, as prescribed in the Constitution, is your right to privacy. And we are truly, truly living in 1984. We are in a surveillance state. We are in Big Brother state. And we can, pose this idea that this is an extremist mindset. We can pretend that this is a conspiracy theory still. We can do that. Sure, people are going to do that. People are going to pretend that this is some far-right nonsense that could never come to pass. It's totally science fiction. But what we're going to talk about tonight is every single reason that is simply not true, and that we are living in science fiction. We are living what people wrote about years and years ago. And they wrote about it, George Orwell, for example, wrote about it not to be cute, not to sell books, to warn us of what was going to happen if we didn't pull our heads out of our asses. And alas, we didn't. And here we are. So there are so many things we could talk about. Every single week we come on the show and we go, oh my gosh, somehow things have gotten worse in 7 days. How could this happen? There is so much going on in the world. And tonight we could talk about the fact that Pete Hegseth gathered, every important person in the military and told them we're starting a war on wokeism. We could talk about that tonight. We could talk about the non-stop, left and right, every other minute, new findings of the internet sleuths that are completely deconstructing the narrative that we've been sold around Charlie Kirk. Where people are proving everything we've been told wrong every 5 minutes on the internet. We're getting new camera angles. We're getting new voices. There is so much evidence to say everything we have been told and sold was a lie. We could talk about how RFK Jr. came out and said, hey, we found the cause of autism and it's acetaminophen. And people are up in arms about that. And now we have pregnant ladies taking Tylenol. Meanwhile, most of us with a brain are trying to avoid Tylenol even when we're not pregnant because we understand the risks of taking these over-the-counter medications. We could talk about how at least 1/4, at least, of the people that, stormed the Capitol on January 6th have now been proven to be federal agents. We could talk about all of those things because they're all important. However, right now, the biggest threat facing the global population is this total control lockdown that is not looming. It is here. It is present. It is arrived. We are on its doorstep. And I'm going to go into some examples of why that's true. But the big thing in the media the past couple days was Keir Starmer, who is, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, Prime Minister of the UK, rolled out his grand plan for digital IDs to be implemented by the end of this parliament. Think of that like by the end of this term, if we were talking about it in this country. This is really serious because digital IDs are not necessarily new. There are countries that are already using them, and we're going to talk about some of those. But now we're talking about societies of the West, societies that, subscribe to a democratic government and to, governments that claim to represent the people, governments that operate within free market systems. We're talking about these digital IDs coming into that part of the world, and you guessed it, it's under the guise of safety. So before I keep going, because you can tell I'm pretty heated, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, well, you certainly covered a wide array of topics that are going on for the week. I did want to mention just a couple other ones. Everybody probably heard of the 5501, which is, a far left group that is intending to have 50 protests in all 50 states with one mission or one objective in mind. And they have been posting things variously that would suggest it's time for retaliation and all these sort of, and largely what it has to do with is the Homeland Security and ICE going up and rounding up people that are here illegally, which the commies know they have to have those votes to support their agenda, so they are drawing a battle line around that. Anyway, there are some threats suggested within that organization, the 5501 protest movement. I also wanted to give a shout out. I know it did make some headlines, but the Amish continue, and Mennonites continue to build homes in North Carolina without a whole lot of fanfare. They are still down there plugging away, and I think all of us around this country have a huge debt of gratitude to pay to those people that have stayed down there long after the story left the 24-hour loop. Those people have stayed down there and continued to help our fellow countrymen get in a shelter that they could survive in. I think it's quite amazing. There's certainly some attributes coming out of that community, that being the Amish and Mennonite community, that the rest of us could learn from. The other thing, and I think it's part of your digital ID thing. I think the artificial intelligence technologies, and there was suggestions last week at the UN meeting that the UN be placed in control, and I think based on their performance in anything else that they've ever done, I would steer completely clear of that. In fact, I think there's been some discussion from the Trump camp that perhaps we are going to pull out of the UN, and I would stand 100% in favor of that. I used to have a T-shirt 20 years ago that said pull out of the UN. It has done nothing except steal our money and work to our detriment since I've been alive. So I think there would be an awful lot of good, sound rationale to pull out of there. But some of the people were discussing about putting this global AI under their jurisdiction, which I think would be a terrible mistake. So there's a lot of other things going on. Don't want to stay too far away from the topic you want to get back to. So I'll bounce it back to you with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, all these things are important because they're all things that do pose real risks, and we should be paying attention to as many of them as we can. I often wonder, is it a bad thing to come on here and do this black pilling, right? We've talked about black pilling on the show before. Are we doing something negative by trying to tell people all the bad and all this scary shit going on? And I think no. I think I'm doing my best to inform people so they can, act and make choices that are educated. But I know that some people think it's better to just keep your head buried in the sand, have faith in God and just plug along. And I totally hear that. I just think that if we're going to be warriors of the faith, we should be informed warriors. And right now there's so much, and I get that it's hard to keep up with all of it. So that's why we aren't even going to try to dissect every single one of these topics, because we'd be here forever. And it's just not possible to do. But some of these topics, when they come up, it's hard to differentiate, is this a real news story that I should even be looking into, or is this another distraction tool? Like, what really is the big fish? Is it big tech? Is it big pharma? Is it big food? Like, I don't know. They're all obviously separate entities that do sort of form one conglomerate when it comes down to who is pulling the strings behind all of them. So that's the important thing. Like, the thing that I think we need to stay focused on is what the end goal is. And at the end of the day, all of these things are tools. They're means to their end. And their end, as we've discussed many times, is less of us. More control, more power, enslaving us so they can ultimately kill us off and run the world on AI while they all live in their, whatever proof, everything proof bunkers. So there's a ton of different rabbit holes that you can dive into, and all these subjects are important, absolutely. But this whole digital ID thing is a very real threat right now, and it's hard to know where it's coming from. Like, where is the root there? And I think the root is the same as what I was just suggesting. It's ultimately all coming from the same place, and that's not just global depopulation, but global control of whatever is left. I mean, that's the whole end game. And it sounds very, like I said earlier, it sounds very sci-fi, it sounds very conspiratorial, it sounds made up, but it's not. This whole thing that's going on in the UK, basically what they're saying is that, we have this huge illegal immigration problem. So we need to come out and implement a system of digital ID to verify your identity so that we are not allowing anyone who doesn't have this form of identification to live or work in this country. Now, lots of red flags, but let's just get to the very first and obvious point. The UK has a system much like ours. We have Social Security here. We all have a Social Security number. In the UK, they have what's called national insurance. It's the same thing. You get a number, right? Now, if I go and apply for any job, I have to be able to prove that I'm a United States citizen. I have to be able to give them my Social Security number and proof of it, a copy of my Social Security card, or a copy of my passport, which is already linked to my Social Security number. UK operates exactly the same way. Most civilized countries do. Most countries have a number like this that you're assigned, which already, again, don't love that, but that's besides the point. We're way past that. What the UK is telling us is that we need a digital ID now to do that. Okay, but in theory, if what you're saying is true, the national insurance number should solve that problem. If the person doesn't have a national insurance number, then they can't live and work in your country. So what you're doing with digital IDs is not impacting criminals. It won't affect the illegal immigrants because they're already operating outside the system and they're doing fine. You're implementing another tool that will apply to law-abiding citizens, but it won't impact the people that are actually doing anything wrong. So that in and of itself is enough of an argument for this to go, no, we shouldn't even do this. What's the point?
So I want to jump in here for a moment. I want to go all the way back to how you opened up, and I want to comment about your question, kind of to ourselves, posed to ourselves, about presenting what appears to be negative data. So I would only suggest that what we're trying to do is present enough stories that every week perhaps we catch the attention of one or two new people and wake them up because something near and dear to them may be threatened. And that is part of the reason that we're trying to put out a whole plethora of threats that are surrounding us. Quickly follow that up with, of course, we're supposed to have faith in God, but remember how we closed last week. We are supposed to be dressed for battle with the helmet and the breastplate and the sword of the truth and all of these things. We are supposed to arm ourselves with information, with truth, to take on the evil that is around us. We all need to pray. We all need to humble ourselves and pray, because that is also suggested. However, we don't sit at home and cower. We do like these young people did around the country that had openly had prayer vigils and gatherings to support the the murder of a human being. That is what we need to do. We cannot be bashful about taking up the good fight. And lastly, if you shut down all of the nonsense agencies, bureaus in this country, Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture, all of these agencies that employ hundreds of thousands of people, unconstitutionally, I might add, if it is not delegated, they don't have the authority. Remember last week. And put them in one of the authorities they do have, and that is border security and a uniform naturalization. And put enough federal people out into the streets, shut down these illegal bureaus and agencies, and put people into a task that they are assigned at the federal level, and that is maintaining a uniform naturalization and a secure border, and find these people. If you are in a local town and somebody shows up, somebody needs to ask, where's the local sheriff? Go visit these people. Hey, where'd you come from? Let me see your identification that shows, because we're going to clean the country up from the people that are stealing from the wealth of the laboring class. Now we have a shutdown looming, and I hope they do. The Democrats appear to be holding our feet to the fire. We have asked for a shutdown previously. Now we're on this side of the fence and we don't want it. But as long as we are operating at a deficit, meaning we are kicking the can down the road and landing it on your generation, we need to force ourselves to deal with out of control spending. And that means giving gifts to people that don't belong here. So you need to work on both sides of that. And there's hundreds and thousands of people that are down in D.C. working for unconstitutional agencies that could be spending their time doing something that the federal government does have the authority to regulate.
Totally, yeah. But I mean, that's such a great point to bring up. It's very difficult for people to wrap their minds around. But at the end of the day, the reason that more government officials are not doing their actual tasks like border security is because for this to work, for this type of technocracy to take over in our country, to take over globally, we still need to have a looming threat of illegal immigrants. So yeah, that's awesome that ICE and the Border Patrol is like stepping up their game and employing more people and trying to kick a bunch of people out. But ultimately, this will be an incredible tool to use when, oh my gosh, we're out here, we're working so hard, we're facing all this pushback. You know what's going to be a way easier option? Like, we can just roll out these digital IDs here too. This is what other countries are doing around the world. They're doing it in the name of safety and protection from illegal immigration. They're saying this is how we stop illegal immigration in this country. And it's not going to be long before we implement that here. We cannot let digital ID become the answer and the response to the illegal immigration issue. We absolutely cannot, because it's not that simple. It is never that simple. The government never does anything for your safety and for your protection and leaves it at that. This is a control mechanism.
Bingo, and that is exactly right. Look, we had border security for centuries. Of course, there's going to be a few that managed to sneak in. We didn't have a huge influx of illegal immigration until policies were made by administrations that were in place to allow them people to come in to try to tilt the demographic to the point where it could never be fixed at the ballot box, which largely it has. We controlled the border fine up until bad policy left it open. We do not need digital ID. We don't need chips in our hands. We don't need any of these things that give government more control over us. And they are selling it as if it's going to be convenient. And this is where we got to wake up. Anytime the government brings you something that is being sold as convenient and it's here for your safety, you know there's a back door. It's a slippery slope. We are going to put ourselves in trouble. And we have to absolutely stand in opposition to this. As you mentioned at the beginning of this segment, it's already being put in place in the UK. And oftentimes what happens over there is soon follows suit over here. And we have to avoid the BS of this being convenient and going to make our lives a whole lot easier. We have the manpower, we have the technology, and we managed the border before, and we've managed to keep a reasonably sound level of people coming into this country by legal means. And we can get back to that. Just do not buy into the notion that we all need to be digitally identified. That is a terrible, terrible idea.
When it comes right down to it, though, the thing is that it doesn't matter ultimately if it is an immigration issue, if it's a convenience issue. This is getting pushed. So our job is to tell you that the answer is always no. And it's so difficult. This is such a difficult conversation because, 5 years ago, when COVID first came out, there were some of us who really saw the end game there. And one of the things that we all discussed, shouldn't say all, there were, a percentage of people discussed coming down the pike that would be absolutely inevitable was digital ID and AI control of those digital IDs. Total lockdown on your day-to-day life. Complete surveillance of how you operate in society. We said, hey, this is what's going to happen. Hey, guys, pay attention. Oh, it's just a vaccine. No, but it's also this. And a lot of people said, no, that can't be right. That's sci-fi. That's crazy. That's right-wing conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat nonsense. It's like, but here we are 5 years later. And what I'm telling you that's going to happen 5 more years down the road is that digital IDs will be in place. And we will have a social credit system much like that in China. We want to talk about how this isn't real. It's happening in China right now. Oh, well, it's China. We're not like China. Yeah, but you know who we are like? The UK.
Yeah.
And they're doing it. And let's talk about the WEF. Almost all these terrible ideas come from the World Economic Forum.
Mm-hmm.
You know who was saying years ago that digital IDs, their absolute goal would be for digital IDs to be a necessity to function in society?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was the WEF. Huge, huge surprise, I'm sure. It's their mission to make this a necessity. That doesn't mean just for the UK or just for China. That means for everyone. It's the World Economic Forum. That's their goal. It's a global initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And there are more reasons for that than just simple convenience. In fact, go to their website. They have a 40-some page PDF. Take out the endnotes, take out the cover letter. Okay, it's 30 pages. And it really doesn't even sound pretty, actually. When you look at it, when they're trying to sell it to you, it still doesn't even sound good. It still kind of gets your hair to raise a little bit. And it's the people who are promoting it. They're the ones that are like, this is awesome. And you still read it and are like, it doesn't sound good to me.
Yeah. And through all of that and all of our episodes trying to alert people, I think we are still challenged with the same dynamic, and that is that the majority of people are quite comfortable being spoon-fed what they are told they need to believe, and they will be lining up to get this thing just like they were the COVID shot. And I love the piece we used to send around. You either trust government or you know history. You can't do both. We have to quit as a society taking everything, as you pointed out, the WEF. Basically, to me, it's a snapshot of some of the folks that occupy the much mysterious global cabal. And as you mentioned earlier in the show tonight, big food, big pharma, big media, military industrial complex, these are all the tools that this group, WEF, global elites, those that want to have a one world government, these are the tools that they have to keep us pacified, keep us dumbed down. Big education's another one. Keep us dumbed down and accepting exactly what they want to do to us. And we're standing in line clapping. We have to, and that, I guess the basis of this conversation, like many other ones before it, is to try and get people to look back at what happens when society blindly trusts their government. You don't have to look very far back in history to see the deaths that were caused The wars that were started ended up in deaths and poverty and destruction. This is what happens when you blindly put your faith in an entity that is clearly not operating in your best interest. Clearly not operating
and they
in
never
your best.
will.
Never will.
They never, it's never ever about that. And that's, I mean, yeah, it's what we have to wake up to, but I think there's a lot of things there. You know, every week, no matter what our conversation is, we always return to the fact that, oh, people are distracted, people are asleep, not enough people are awake. And, you know, I'm always going to tell you that people are waking up to this all the time. The issue right now isn't waking people up. I don't think so. I mean, people who are like dead asleep are going to stay sleeping. They're comatose. It's over. Okay.
Mhm.
Out the window. I don't care. I literally don't care. What I care about is there are so many people who are awake to what is going on here. They understand the threat when they hear the word Palantir. They go, okay, yeah, that's bad. But they don't understand what all is going on globally and how this puzzle all connects and how it creates an issue that is going to be forever damning for all of mankind. If when the time comes, you don't say no. There was an option to say no for COVID. There was an option to say no then, and people did not take it out of fear, out of convenience, out of a million different reasons. And that's not my place to say who did what for why. I don't care. People could have said no, and they didn't. And we're going to have another big conversation like that very soon, based on everything going on around the globe. And I do want to touch on a couple more examples here. We're going to have another situation just like this, where you're going to have the opportunity to choose for yourself and for your family to say no. Cool, that's awesome if you're awake. That's awesome if you trust in God. I'm super pumped about that. But if you don't say no when the time comes, you are not helping anyone. You're not helping future generations. You're not helping your own kids. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping this country. Like, that. I don't care if people are sleeping. What I care about is that the people who are awake understand that they have an option to say no and they have to take it. That's like what's most important to me right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. We all have an opportunity to stand and rebuke the mark of the beast. That's what it is. And here's another thing that kind of ties into that. And maybe I'll ruffle a few feathers here, but that's quite all right. Too many of us are just going along, well, we got Trump in there, everything's going to be fine. No, it isn't. No one man, even if he had the intent of making everything right, and I'm not sure that he is. I mean, what happened to Fort Knox? What happened to the Epstein files? What happened to all these other promises? So too many people said, we got our guy in there, we got the House, we got the Senate, everything's fine. We have a choice, as you pointed out, and we have to recognize the threat. So we make a good decision when that choice needs to be made. You can't just blindly follow along because, our leaders are doing it or whatever. That you have to recognize the threats that lie within, like the vaccine, and everybody just felt comfortable, ran out and got it, or were scared and got it, or were threatened and went out and got it. Let the threats happen. At some point, we have to say, I'm not going for that. I am absolutely not going for that. If I'm standing on an island, I will figure something out, but I'm not going to be muscled into doing something like accepting a vaccine or a chip in my hand or some other form of digital ID where you are completely under the control of the powers that be. And if they want to shut you off and completely disable your ability to function in society, they can do that. Now your voice has been taken away too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so frustrating because, you know, to your point, people look at Trump and they look at this administration, and I think some of them are like, oh shit, this didn't work. But others are like, cool, yeah, we're all good. I got my guy in there. Like, I'm wiping my hands of it. I don't need to do anything else. And I look at Trump and I go, oh yeah, this was like the worst. I mean, Kamala would have been worse, sure. It would have, I think, ultimately led to the same end, quicker. We're just taking different paths there. I mean, we're going to the same place. It's just, what train are you riding on? That's it. And yeah, we promoted Trump, but I'm not some asshole who's going to be like, oh yeah, Trump's perfect just because I voted for him. Like, no, I recognize that there's a lot of shit going really wrong right now. And I don't think it's because Trump's a bad guy. I genuinely don't. What I think is that Trump is pacified and Trump is manipulated by people that are bigger than him and people that are bigger than us and people that are way bigger than what we can even understand, because it's a demonic force. It's so much bigger than things of this world. We cannot simply just chat about it on a podcast, on a Fourth Box podcast, and like unravel the mysteries of the problems around the globe. It is such a big issue. But you know, we've talked about Netanyahu on here. Obviously, he came up in the Charlie Kirk conversation. He's come up previously, and you know, he just has this conversation, not to sidetrack, but I'm gonna a little bit here. He just has this conversation with Trump where he's like, yeah, peace talks. Oh, Israel and Gaza, we're probably gonna figure it all out. And then like in the same breath, in front of the media, just starts speaking his own language saying, yeah, we're not doing that. Like, Trump is not holding the power that he did the first term, and it's because there's so many other people that are not just manipulating our president, because it doesn't matter who the president is. They're manipulating our government, our country, our nation. There are people who are making the decisions for us that we just simply have no control over. I mean, it doesn't matter who the president is. Ultimately, it doesn't even matter what they want to do. It doesn't matter how lofty their goals are and how much freedom they hope to get back and how much they're going to stick to the Constitution. None of it matters, because whoever's pulling the strings behind the curtain, those people stay the same. The presidents come and go, but the group behind the curtain stays the same. So
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter, which is why we're where we are now and why we're facing this threat that is slowly creeping its way into our own country.
I think so. You know, I mean, if you look at the real activities around us, as mentioned, Fort Knox, what happened? It went silent. Epstein, what happened? It went silent. Doge, big nothing burger. Doge, it was going to tear down all of the wasteful spending. Then why are we sitting down and having a shutdown looming if that was going to be already all cut out? We mentioned earlier in the show, the Amish and the Mennonites are still up fixing the North Carolina problem. What happened to FEMA? What happened to reconfiguring these agencies that are nothing but waste and upon waste of taxpayers' dollars? All of these same things are still going on. So granted, Trump probably took care of a couple of things that many of us could stand and cheer for. But the promises that were made when it gets above his pay grade, and believe me, that's what we're talking about here. This is above the president's pay grade. Somebody's leaning on him, telling him this is how it's going to go, or making sure all the actual levers of control to get these things done have been neutered and not going to take place. So I think I want to continue to believe that Trump really has the country's best interest in his heart. But this is over his pay grade now. And the people that are running the show are going to push through digital ID. Guess what? We can stand there on every podcast for the next year and advise people to steer clear of that idea. They're going to get her done. They're going to get her done. And we're all going to have be forced to make a decision, just like you said. Are you going to go stand in line? Your employer's going to tell you have to. All of the same stuff that was, they learned their lessons during the COVID. All of these same threats are going to come out. And are you going to march down and get it? Or are you going to say, nope, this is where I draw the line and I will figure something else out? And I'm very fearful that if there's a very small percentage of people that don't go along, we will be much easier to control and to beat and to into shape or whatever they want to do. We have to have large numbers of people that refuse to accept the government overreach.
I think so. Now it seems like a good time for me to kind of go into talking about what's been going on in some other countries around the world, because I really think when it comes right down to the brass tacks here, when we're talking about getting numbers, when we're talking about having people on our side, we're not talking about just people in our country. because we have to understand if the threat is this big that it's outside of our country, if it's bigger than our country, the threat is global, which means the people that we have to align with on our side is also global. So there's a lot of people in that pool. We have a lot of people that we can call on, because I look at other countries sometimes and I'm like, damn, they're really like getting after it. They're protesting for real. They're showing up in mass. I mean, even the people that showed up for Charlie Kirk in other countries was bigger than a lot of what we saw here. And I think, okay, you know what? We do have numbers. We do have numbers. They might not be right here, but we have them. We have to find ways to connect like internationally with these people, because our numbers are so big compared to the threat. And that's always going to be true. So let's talk about some of the other things that are going on globally so that we can kind of compare and look at what could potentially be coming down the pike for us. So Australia, they sort of took this path almost a year ago in December of 2024. And, you know, they were very much like, it's voluntary. It is totally up to you. You don't have to even worry about it. Just a little fun thing that we're doing to make your life easy if you want. And then by, I think, like March, it was mandatory. And they don't have like a full social credit system like China does yet, but they're certainly working their way there. And Australia does kind of lean this way in a lot of things. They've been known to be a little bit more liberal as far as like what their government decides to do for them. You know, we can see that with guns. We've seen that with free speech issues. So not a huge surprise that Australia is facing this, but they are definitely already kind of walking the plank on the digital ID thing. Switzerland not too long ago passed a law that would kind of roll digital IDs into their system. And it was like one of the closest votes by percentage ever in Switzerland's history. Like 50-50. It just barely passed. And they had tried to roll it out before. I'm not quite sure how much further in like into the past it was, but somewhat in the past they had tried to roll this out, and it sounds to me like the verbiage was that there was too much opportunity for private entities to control that data once that data went into their system, you know, the cloud system that's being used here. Because that's another thing to consider. Like, there's a lot of threat of just hacks and security breaches. Like, yeah, sure, like we can talk about how the government having our data is an issue, but let's just be honest, how many times have we seen like random companies come out over the last couple of years and be like, oh, dang it, we somehow accidentally were hacked, and, you know, 200,000 people's accounts have been compromised. So like all of a sudden all of your information is just going to be out there in some cloud. So, okay, obviously that's an issue in and of itself. But in Switzerland, going back to that, they were not able to get this bill passed at first because it sounded like there was a little bit too much of an opportunity for just private entities to be owning that data. So they basically rewrote it in a way that was like, don't worry, it's only going to be on the device of the user, which actually doesn't even make sense. This is where they're kind of asking you to, like, you know, do age verification or location verification. So you might have to upload your ID to prove I'm over 18 to get on a certain website or something like that. This is what they're telling you it's going to start with. Now, we know how simple it is once a bill or a law like this is passed, and I can't speak for Switzerland, right? But like, let's just look at our own country. Once a law like this is passed, it's usually typically fairly easy for some sleazy lawyers to come in and be like, oh, well, the wording actually suggests that maybe we could just, you know, tweak a couple things, and oh, now any private entity can own the data. So obviously setting yourself up for failure there. Not getting super heavy yet, right? Let's look at something a little bit more serious. This is pretty recent. Vietnam, very recently, just froze 86 million bank accounts, which is almost half of all the accounts in their country, of people who were refusing to comply with their new digital ID laws. They froze their bank accounts. This isn't even like China, where you already have a digital ID and you did something to upset the government. No. This is just people who refuse to comply. They froze their bank accounts. 86 million, half of the country. So, okay, again, we go, oh, Vietnam, oh, that's so far away. How could that possibly apply to us? Okay, let's look at Europe, the entire continent of Europe. They are now replacing passport stamps with a biometric system starting October 12th. That's days away. So
Yep.
You want the opportunity to say no to this shit? You need to stop traveling to Europe, because you're plugging yourself into their system, which they have already said out loud and professed that this is just a progressive start to test and expand the technology for all of Europe. Like,
Yep.
This is not a little tiny issue that's happening here and there. This is a global issue that is coming for all of us. And it is not as simple as, oh, yeah, it's basically just like my driver's license online. No. It is so much more than that. And before I even start talking about what China's system looks like, I'm going to let you take it for a minute.
Well, yeah, and you're certainly bringing to light a lot of things that I think maybe most people have no idea, and they simply are going to fall back on business as usual. I trust our elected officials to be looking out for me, because I'm not going to take my eyes off of The Price is Right or whatever's got them, Googled into the idiot box. This is it. We can explain the threats. And we can explain the possibility of having your bank account shut down once they have this control. And people simply are going to go along with it. And I think that is why politically there is no heat on our elected officials, on the courts, on anybody to resist this stuff, because I still go back to the masses are asleep. Now, just think, if 86 million people in this country, or half the population, which appears what it is, half the Vietnamese population, have lost access to their bank accounts because they refuse to, I would think that this is the time, and believe me, we have never advocated it, but at some point, we got to find a hill that we ain't backing up from. At some point, we say, nope, no more. No more am I going to take having my wealth stolen, having my children enslaved to a system that's been broken for 100 years, so far in debt they can't live the life that we lived. No more are we going to do it. And this is just making it easy. It's making it easy. And even if our government is resistant to it, their handlers, big media, big pharma, big food, military industrial complex, all of those things are going to work against them at the behest of WEF, the global cabal. They want these things in place. It makes their job so much easier. It makes mitigating a threat by disabling a person's ability to conduct business in a normal way, to engage in commerce. Your bank accounts, your card, we all wanted that card. We all want to get that card. And now all they got to do is shut the damn card off.
Right.
And you're going to do exactly what you're told, like you always do. So it's out there. It's getting close. We are going to have an opportunity at ground level to say it ain't coming here, because your elected officials aren't going to stand in the way of it. It comes down to us, each and every one of us, to stand up and
absolutely.
say no, like we did against COVID, those of us that did. It's just as you pointed out, it's the same thing. We're going to have to stand up and refuse to play ball.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just said it. The government isn't protecting us from this. It's absolutely absurd to think that the government would stand in the way. Our government would stand in the way of this coming to our country. Our government is setting us up to have this roll in. I mean, look at some of the acts that we talked about recently. The Genius Act, we talked about it not that long ago with Denny. These are total controls of central bank digital currencies. Like, this is the same, it's all the same conversation. And it's very hard to wrap your head around for a lot of people because it's very techy and it feels very like bigger than what actually impacts your daily life. And you think, oh, well, okay, all they can do is shut down my bank card. Like, yeah, that's annoying, but I could come up with other ways to, I could just use cash probably. Yeah, sure, maybe. But there's a lot of other pieces to that puzzle. And we're going to look at China's social credit system briefly before we are done for the night, because it's really important, because it really is ultimately kind of the outline that a lot of countries will end up following. And, people listening to this or whatever, you can call me crazy all day long, but I've been trying to tell you guys this for 5 years and it's here. So I'm right? Just trust me for a minute, hang in there. No matter how crazy it sounds, this is coming. This is reality. So we have to be prepared for what's to come. And we have to understand what our options are to stand up in defiance of it. But the one thing that I wanted to go back to with the UK, because this is one that rings true for a lot of people, because it is so much more similar. When people think about Vietnam, it feels like, oh, well, it's kind of like a third world country. Who cares? But it's okay, well, the UK isn't, and all of Europe isn't. So the one thing I wanted to talk about when we were mentioning Keir Starmer and his speech, which again, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but I don't care, frankly. One of the things that he mentioned when he was rolling this out was that to tackle the root causes of all of these problems that he's insinuating are going on, that he will be solving with the digital ID, he is looking upstream to tackle poverty, conflict, and climate change.
Noble.
There it is. Climate change.
Yeah.
So for anyone who thinks this only impacts your bank account, understand that this is also how they roll the whole climate initiative into everything. And they go, oh, you're spending a little bit too much of your carbon credit. So this week you can't drive your car. And that's actually really easy to pull off, because most of your cars have a chip inside. Actually, almost every car has a chip inside. And they actually can shut it off. And half of you went out and rushed to buy electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles because they told you were saving the planet, but it really has nothing to do with the planet, actually. It has everything to do with the fact that they can shut it off. If you are not abiding by their terms, and their terms are much like what we just saw in Nova Scotia, where they go, oh, if you come into the woods, we're going to charge you $50,000. Oh, you mean if I go into the public lands that are owned by me, I'm going to get fined? This is the reality that we're facing. And this is why, I wanted to just briefly touch on the social credit system in China and how some of that works, because I don't think people understand that that's real. For some reason, I think people just think that's a myth or something, but that's actually how China functions. They have a social credit system. They've enacted digital ID a long time ago, and they actually have red lists, which are good, allegedly, and black lists, which are, as you guessed it, quite bad. And they can reward you with credits to your digital ID. So your digital person, this ID that you carry around that is your digital entity, they can reward you for paying your debts on time, or for acts of civic responsibility, or if you own a business, good business practices. They can take away some of your credits, lowering your score if you default on loans, if you're evading taxes, if you provide false information online or post false information online. Let's think about that. Posting false information online. Okay, so when we think about the past like 5 years and how much all of us have been censored for misinformation, that is not really an objective thing. That is the opinion of whoever is looking at the thing. It's an opinion based, it's biased. So you can get points deducted from your ID, your score, if you post something that's maybe unsavory to the person looking at it. This isn't made up. Like, this is actually happening in parts of the world. This is real. If your business is caught polluting or breaking safety laws. So think about like OSHA. Think about all of the insane laws that we have made up, around things like this for in the name of climate change, in the name of, protecting the environment and making the world a better place for all. Think about all of these crazy restrictions and regulations we have in place. If that comes here, ask yourself, is your score going up or down? Like, what are we doing here? And what happens when you don't comply, when your score gets too low? Your bank might get closed. Yeah, your bank might get shut down. You might be froze out of your bank account for a few days. You might not be able to buy certain foods. For example, your carbon credits, that's a real thing. Maybe you're not able to buy meat because they decided that meat was outside of your carbon threshold. It might limit your employment opportunities. You might not be able to ride public transportation. Now, sure, there's benefits to having a high score, but what is the government doing telling me I get a high score or a low score just living? Like, what are we doing here? This is insane. And again, people feel like this is far away because this is China. Let's look at all the other examples I presented. It's not far away. Switzerland, all of Europe, like, this isn't far away. This is knocking at our door. And Palantir has a massive contract with our government, and that's the key to the castle. So we want to talk about how this can't come here. It's here.
It's here.
They're just figuring out how to get all the pieces in line just right so they can initiate it. They can roll it out for us just like they did everybody else.
And one of the things, the point you made early on here, back a couple minutes ago, that I'm going to suggest is going to be dealt with, and that's why we can all store up a bunch of cash. And guess what? I would say we are well past 50% on our way to a cashless society. That what are you going to do if you go up to the gas station? You can't buy gasoline with cash, or you can't go to the grocery store and no longer. We are most of the way there, and that will come shortly after the digital IDs. The enforcement end of that will be there is no cash option. Yeah. So to put the big overarching look at this is why we the people losing touch with our Constitution has resulted in this. Remember, the Constitution spelled out for our elected officials exactly what rights of ours they were charged with preserving. I've been saying it for years. Who is the biggest threat to our rights? The very people that swore they were going to protect them. If government, those elected, federal, state, and local level, if they upheld their promise, their solemn oath, none of this would be a threat. None of this would be a threat. They have promised to guarantee to us the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, never an infringement on gun, never an infringement on your right to free speech, or never an infringement on your right to practice your faith as you choose. All of these things were guaranteed. That is their only job. Instead, they are working for the demons at the WEF, making sure they're answering their phone call, not ours, and providing them a path. Government is always about control, and they just went on fast track when we went to sleep. That's what's happened here. If they were doing their job, if the sheriffs were doing their job in their county, nope, ain't coming here, we're not going to accept it. If the governors were doing their job, the commissioners, the state legislature, we're going to bring the federal government into line. We already have the 10th Amendment and Supreme Court cases that give us the authority to tell federal government to go pound sand. If any of these cowards, liars, cheats, and leeches were doing their job, this would all go away, because their only job is to protect our rights, not take it away. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to pave the path for the people that want to take our rights away. And just look around. Look at COVID. Look at how people lost their job, were threatened with losing their job. They jumped in and took your rights away, not protected them. They were on the other side of the fence. And you think it's going to be any different this time? It 100% is not. They already have walked down the path to get this thing started.
Yeah. And it makes sense. At the end of the day, it makes sense. I mean, when you take a government position, you are a public servant and you are getting paid as such. But when someone approaches you and says, maybe I can slide you a little something under the table, and it's coming from those who are the wealthiest and the most powerful in the world. Oh, and also, by the way, I have the opportunity to endanger your entire family and everyone you love if you actually don't accept my deal, then people take it. People in our government take it. And if that's really, because that's conspiratorial, that's made up. If that's really what they're allegedly up against, who could blame them? You get more money and your family doesn't die. Pretty good deal.
Yeah. And maybe it starts out a little more subtle than that. Maybe it's, hey, if you ever want to get reelected, we can infuse enough money into your campaign to make sure you're reelected, but you're going to pull the handle the way we want you to. And this has gone on for years and years, and they all run around with their pocket constitution, which is a joke. It's a joke. All of them. It's a joke.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it starts out very subtly, and if you want to get back for the next term, here's what you got to do. I want this and I want that. And you start being morphed into the system, and pretty soon, taking care of your constituents is the last thing that any of them consider. It's obvious.
Yep.
Every single one of them broke their rule, broke their oath. So how can you tell me any differently? And only we can take it back. If you're counting on somebody else to protect your rights and freedom, it's already gone. Only you. And when you decide to stand, and we all decide to stand, we will get it back. But until then, we are going to live under this tyranny that it is. This is tyrannical. And it's not coming from our own government. They're just part of the administrators. It's coming from a much more powerful entity.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because the last thing that I did want to bring up tonight was something that I had actually talked about a couple weeks ago, very briefly. It was when I was on with Fox, and it's not brand new information now, but it feels relevant. What happened in Nepal is relevant for the whole world. And what happened there was that a simple social media ban caused such an uproar that they overthrew the government, the whole government. They kicked everybody out and they burned all the buildings down. And then they used Discord, which is just an open server, communication website, to decide who the new prime minister was going to be. And that's who is currently in office in Nepal. And they picked that person based on who they felt was going to actually represent the voice of the actual people. And they had the ability to do that because they literally overthrew their government. And it wasn't that hard. And they were actually able to just communicate together online to get it done. And I know there are ways to do this that feel very violent and very far out of the realm of what anyone should consider to be doing. For sure. And maybe in our country it would be a little harder to pull that off with the levels of security, etc., etc., etc. However, these were kids. This was Gen Z. And you always talk about how, the younger generation has the energy. I really think the younger generation has the energy. So I hope that every nation can look at Nepal and look at what they did and what they were able to do with very simple organization. It did not require a lot. They said enough is enough, and they just did it. They just went and did it. And they decided amongst themselves as a group of people who was going to be in charge of them from this point on. And you know what's incredible? If that person doesn't do a good job, doesn't do what they asked them to do, the person in office knows damn well same thing will happen to them. So they're going to do what the people want them to do, which is what all of us in every country have the ability to do. It's not our right. Remember that. It's our duty.
Absolutely.
It's our responsibility.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I was going to say, as it's clearly spelled out in the founding documents. It is our duty to cast off such government. So what we got to do is get enough people to recognize that they have become oppressive. They have taken away our rights, not protected them. They've become tyrannical and made dictates to us by which we have to live under conditions that we choose not to live. It is time to do exactly what those founding documents said, and that is to cast off such government, prosecute these people that did not uphold their oath and put this crap on us, go after the WEF and all the rest of them that have owned our elected officials for the last 50 years, and get back to the beginning. And just to your point, they know when you first start with a clean slate, they're going to dance the tune exactly the way they're told, because they know the same thing can happen to them. It's only after generations and generations of comfortable living with nobody, pretty soon, all of that stuff is slowly being taken away. And it's just like the frog in the pot of water. The heat keeps getting up, but he's already in there, so he don't realize it until he's boiled. And that's where we are as a society. But I think, to your point, younger people, as was led by the example in Nepal, are recognizing they have been dealt a load of lies, a mountain of debt, and no opportunity to live the life that we lived. Generation or two gone by, you guys are not going to have it. What happened to the promise? I want it back. And the energy comes from enough people recognizing that and saying, we're going to get it back we're going to remove all these people. There are mechanisms to do it. Maybe you burn all the buildings down. I would have suggested that probably needed to have been done a long time ago, because there ain't nothing but skunks and thieves down there. But the way you get back to it is recognizing that you have been taken advantage of because we've been distracted by other things. And I want back what's coming to me. I want what the blood of my forefathers guaranteed to me I'm going to have. And it certainly is not the mess that we're living in today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big conversation, I think, for a lot of people to have, and it's scary and it's overwhelming and it feels like too much, but it is the question that we have to start asking ourselves. And I really do believe that there are people who are waking up to this and who are ready to get on board with this initiative of us taking back what is rightfully ours. Like, we're not stealing anything that doesn't belong to us. This was always ours. Freedom was ours to begin with, and it was stolen from us. And you talked about some protests earlier, and I know there's another 2.0 of the whole No Kings thing, and we see the leftists kind of doing the protest thing, and unfortunately those are funded by people like George Soros, who are in fact part of the initiative that we are working against. So it's tough, because the only organization we seem to have is when it's funded by the enemy. But if we could get that level of organization, of people just showing up, we just need people to show up. Like, It's very hard to do. And you know why? It's because we're already enslaved. Let's be honest. People go, I don't have time for that because I have to go to work, because I have to pay bills, because I am in debt. Because they already enslaved you. At a certain point, it's time to just put your foot down and go, you know what? Maybe it's time to show up. Maybe one day off work wouldn't be so bad. And I'm not suggesting those are the right protests to go to, but if they can organize, then so can we. Yep. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. There are a lot of crazy leftists, but there's also a lot of leftists that are just normal people who think the same as we do and are upset about the same things as us. Like, I'm sorry if you want to hate all of them, but actually we're mostly the same. Yep. And until we get that figured out and understand that we have to show up together and we have to stop making it so one-sided, if we show up together, dude, it's over. It's over. It's over. That is 100% correct. We've been saying it for years. This is not a Republican-Democrat thing. Do not be duped into their game. They keep us off the trail by keeping us going Republican-Democrats. So the fringe left or the fringe right is over there and getting all the headlines. The meat and potatoes, the bulk of the people just want to be left alone. They want the rights and the privileges that our forefathers purchased for us to be guaranteed to them without threat. And let the fringe elements make all the noise. Do not let big media influence your decision. All of them aren't acting like that. All of them aren't acting like this on this hand. We, the majority, have got to recognize that we have a duty. As you said, it's not an option. We are instructed by our founding documents, namely the Declaration of Independence. When those activities become oppressive, we have a duty. It's not an option. We are told this is what we have to do to make sure future generations have what we were supposed to have. It's time for us. It's our generation's time. All of us that are living today as an adult, all of those generations, it's up to us, and now is the time to take back what has been stolen while we slumbered. Yeah, so, God, I know that's a lot to get through tonight. Super heavy stuff. It is so overwhelming to me all the time, but I'm not going to stop harping on the fact that some of you are awake out there and are just too nervous to say no. And the big thing we need to do right now, two things. We just talked about one. We need to come together. And the second one is we need to not be afraid to say no. We talked about it earlier in the show. It's so important. This is coming. This is not an if. This is a when. It's coming here. When it comes here, are you going to have the courage to say no this time? And that's it. Come together with the people who maybe don't think like you and say no. That's my piece. I said my piece for the evening. And when enough of us say no, it's over. It's just like that old cartoon we used to set around with all the masses of people underneath the fat cats playing Monopoly with their all hunched over and Monopoly board on their back. When we stand, their game is over. All we got to do is stand and say, nope, ain't happening. And their game is over. There are many, many, many more of us than there are of them. As was the example you gave about Nepal. Just stand and it's over. Yeah. Yeah. Even here, even in this country, even when it feels like you're the minority, you know, if the last 5 years have showed us anything, it's that you're not. You're not the minority, actually. Most people think like you. And we just have to find a way to come together on it. And all forces are against us, but in time, truth wins. It's going to happen. Yep. I'll let you close this out for tonight because no better thing to end it on than truth wins, right? Yeah, of course. And, one of the places as I was preparing for this conversation tonight, and we spoke early on about the signs around us and all of that. Well, Revelations, if you want to get into the Bible and study up on
end times and all of those things. Revelation's a great place to do it, although there are others, areas throughout the Bible, but Revelation. So tonight from Revelations, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. That came from Revelation 13:17, talking about all of us getting marked and digitally ID'd and all of these things. It's spelled right out there that these things are coming. Yeah. So it's up to us to go to battle with truth on our side.
Yeah. I'm glad you shared that because I think a lot of people think the Bible is very outdated and not really relevant to today's world. But if you read Revelations and start to think about it in the terms of what is happening right now, you might be surprised and uncomfortable.
100%. Yep. Well, until next week, I know we gave you a lot to think about. And again, we are always here in an attempt to wake a couple of more people up, win them over to the recognizing what is going on in the world around them. So when we decide to stand, we have gained another couple to stand with us.
Yeah. Amen. So with that, guys, we will see you next week, Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.